Hey everybody, it's Tori Townley. Welcome to the Serve Brew. Hope everybody's having a great day today. You got your coffee and your notebook ready. It's going to be a good one. We have been kind of talking about this topic a little bit in the world of Servolution. And I'm just so excited to have these guests on today. I can't even put words into the introduction, but they are some of the most amazing, compassionate leaders that I have ever really met. I'm already so inspired. They are great friends of Pastor Dino and all of us at ARC and Servolution. So welcome to the podcast, Pastor Toby Slough and Bailey Garner. Hello.
Hey guys, how
thank
are you?
you.
Tori, it's great to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm excited. So yes, you guys are on today. Quick intro, Pastor Toby is the legacy pastor now of Cross Timbers Church, which is brand new announcement. You were the founder. You planted that church how many years ago?
22 years ago.
Wow, that's insane. That is a long time of history. And so now you're in the legacy vein, which is a new adventure for you.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's something new, but I'm having a great time so far.
Good. That's awesome. And you're also a mental health coach. Is that correct, coach?
Yeah. I would use the word coach. I'm definitely an advocate. Let's put it in those terms. I'm a coach, an advocate, a helper, I hope.
Absolutely a helper, for sure, a coach and an author, New York Times bestselling author. Yes.
Well, I don't know what's New York you're talking about, but I've written a few. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I love it. And then we've got Bailey Garner, who's actually Pastor Toby's daughter, but
Yes.
you've got way more in your resume as well. Wonder Woman, mom, podcaster, all those things.
I mean, I take it, I feel honored to be called his daughter. So that's good. I'm excited to be here. And honestly, I glean wisdom from him all the time. So even in my own life, I was able to learn from him. So I'm excited that we get to do this together. It's very sweet for you to have both of us. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being on. We were talking earlier. I know you guys just launched a podcast together, and it has been one of my favorite personal things. Every week, I'm like checking on Tuesdays. Did it drop yet? I need some encouragement. It's such a good podcast to hear y'all's behind the scenes every day check in with dad kind of talks. It's amazing. So yeah, you guys are a blast. I know I didn't actually say what the topic is today, but it's obviously mental health. Pastor Toby, you have in your book, Not Yet, which we will highlight a little bit more today, but Not Yet, it just shares your testimony with battling anxiety, depression, and what that walk has looked like for you, especially, in ministry and leading and serving other people. And then Bailey, I know you have a big piece of a testimony as well, just growing up, learning from your dad, and then also your own struggles and battles. So you guys, it's interesting. This is such a great, important topic. It's something that everyone needs, mental health, and there's a lot of struggles with that's coming to the surface and being highlighted right now. And you guys, we had talked a while back about outreach. Like, what does that look like? Mental health, there's not a ton of open resources for everyone, but especially some of the areas that we serve, different people groups. How can churches and people who are doing this Servolution thing, how can we get on board and really support? So that's kind of the nutshell of what the conversation's about today. I'm going to shut up. But Pastor Toby and Bailey, I would love to just let you guys kind of share, help our audience get to know who you are, a little of your testimonies if they haven't met you guys yet, and how y'all kind of work together. So
Bailey, you want to kick it off? You want me to?
You go.
Thank you, baby. Well, the short version is almost 28 years ago, back when no one was talking about mental health. No one I knew had ever gone to a counselor. The only word I'd heard in this area was I had a great uncle who had a nervous breakdown. Nobody talked about what that was. And I basically woke up one night where I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking, sweating. Today, we would know it instantly as a panic attack. I didn't know what it was. I thought I was either dying or going crazy. And I got up and did what every guy tries to do. I tried to walk it off, and I walked for the next 7 hours. And I did that for 17 days. where I would get up in the middle of the night once my wife and my kids were asleep, and I would just walk the hall and beg God to do something. And again, no frame to put this in at that point in my life. And finally, I'm driving down I-35, and I'm it's taking everything I have not to run my car into a bridge abutment. I know what it's like to get to the place where you really think you're out of options. Like the devil, he fools you into believing like the world will be better off without you. That's why I wasn't. It scared me, Tori. And that began me on the journey. I went to see a counselor, Christian counselor in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They had a little private room for me because I was a pastor, which I thought was weird. It's like, well, somebody else is in here. We're both in here for the same thing. What's the big deal, right? But it led me on a journey to figure out what it meant to be free in Christ, what it meant to love Jesus with all your heart, and battle some of these issues. And the 27-year journey took me to a place you mentioned, my book, Not Yet, that I did not want to write. I didn't want to open up that box of ugly from my past. But it's really about redefining what freedom is. And I thought for so long that one day God was going to touch me and I would never have another panic attack. I'd never fight mental health. And God showed me, that his freedom wasn't going to be the absence of a panic attack. It was going to be finding his power in the middle of it. And that Paul's thorn in the flesh, whatever it was, I think he made it pretty general so everyone could see themselves in it. But, he said, hey, man, God said, no, my grace is going to show up in your weakness, not in your strength. And that's my story. So when we launched Cross Timbers 22 years ago, we launched it mostly because I wanted to create a place where people who were battling addiction, battling mental health, that the church would be the first place, not the last place they would come. And which led us in the last couple of years to launch out in a ministry called Gobi that Bailey and I working together is a dream. I'm sure she'll tell you a little bit about that, but it's basically a ministry to provide tools for kids, their parents, church leaders to be able to teach them what real freedom can be, to connect the power of Jesus to this epidemic of mental health issues, not just in our country, but literally around the world.
Wow, that you just are my hero, like instantly. I knew that from Pastor Dino and social media and highlighting you guys, but getting to sit and have conversations over the phone. This is our second Zoom call, and like instant hero. And I can just say, reading through the book for me personally, I know you kept saying in the book, like, I didn't want to write this, like I wanted to be healed and then tell the miracle. But even for someone, I struggle sometimes with the depression and the anxiety, maybe not to the extreme, but it is real. And I get very dark thoughts sometimes. And it's like to have a pastor be so vulnerable and so open and say, in the middle of this, there is hope. That is one of the most like tender, most refreshing and encouraging things that I have ever been part of. And so I can only imagine, if that touched my heart the way that it did, how many more people are you reaching and touching at such a personal and deep level. So we honor you for that. Thank you so much. I know our listeners are probably in the same, like, just thank you for being open with your heart and your life. It's so encouraging. So thank you, Pastor Toby.
You're welcome.
And Bailey, you have already become a jewel of a friend too. Tell us a little about your perspective, your story, and where you're at now too.
Well, I feel the same about you. I'm honored to know you. And I'm 34. I have 3 little kids, and I actually live in Mississippi, and we moved here whenever my husband, not long after we got married, and he got a job here, and we moved away from family. And I was a teacher at the time. And when we moved, I didn't have a job. I was lonely, and I was really just struggling in my head. And I remember calling Dad and just being like, I'm not okay. Like, I can't get out of this cycle. And he instantly found me a counselor not far. He called all his connections and I went to counseling, and it was scary. And what's funny is that I watched him. I knew his story. He's always been as like what you see today is what he is at home. It's what he is on the stage. It's who he is with everybody. And so thankfully I've gotten to learn from him my whole life, but it still feels scary. And I feel like instantly though, we were connected in a different way through our pain. And we've always been really understood each other well because we're very similar people. And so but I feel like that really connected our hearts. And I now, he's who I call because he really understands where I'm coming from. And so not long ago, last year, he asked me to come on and work with him for Gobi. And it has been such a blessing because I've watched him struggle, even though I didn't really understand what's going on as a young girl. But like, as I've grown up, I've watched him struggle and I've watched him share his story and I've watched him be vulnerable and I've watched him help so many people. And now I get to be on the other side of it where I'm also coming along and helping him help others, and specifically pastors and community leaders, because I see the benefit of his vulnerability and his story. And I just feel so excited and honored that we get to help other people share their story and also feel not so alone, and because I think that is what it comes down to is helping people not feel alone and then pointing them to Jesus. And so I just am loving it and loving that I get to learn from him and loving that we get to partner with organizations like you guys. And so, yeah, that's kind of why I'm here today. So I'm excited.
Oh man, that is so special. Like, yeah, you have such a powerful presence about you, but it's not like an intimidating powerful. It's just like, I have grit and I'm going to help others and I'm going to be real. And y'all both have that, but it's such a cool balance, just the way that you guys work together. And yeah, the father-daughter thing, I'm big on like the generational blessings of God and just how things do get passed down and how we teach our kids. And I'm terrified. Like, I go through some drunk and I am absolutely not perfect. And I have a 3-year-old. What am I going to do? And just watching you guys, I know Bailey, you have kids a little bit older than me, but even through the podcast, like watching Pastor Toby, you parent Bailey and Bailey parent her children. And it's not about being perfect, but it's about, you always say it's about being healthy. Being a healthy parent is so powerful. So thank you guys for setting the example. I wanted to ask, we talked a little bit about our listeners today are mostly, they're people who are leading outreach in their communities. We have some, ministry leaders, pastors, individuals, and mostly it's the outreach leader we're talking to today. They have a heart for reaching those who are battling either with mental illness or just, need support in mental health. Could you guys, first of all, I don't think it's a mystery what mental health and mental illnesses look like in this day and age. I think probably everyone has been touched by it, but just shine a little bit of a light on the current situations that you guys are seeing on mental health, mental illnesses. Lay out the picture of the land for us.
Well, I would say firstly, like the word mental health or mental wellness, I'm really grateful that it's not as stigmatized as it used to be. We have a long way to go, especially I think in the local church, we have a long way to go. But, as Bailey could tell you, because she's seen it so many times, I've just overloaded her with statistics from around the world. A third of our kids pre-pandemic said they were battling at some level depression, anxiety. And now it's over 2/3. It's over 65% of kids are saying that they're battling it. We're at 40% among adults that are battling. I like to call it feeling overwhelmed by life, just basically feeling overwhelmed by life. And I have said many times that we are in the midst in our country of the Chicago fire as it relates to mental health. But the good news is, the local church continues to be the hope of the world. I take a box on stages with me. I took one this weekend. I was one of our friends, Manna Church of West Florida, and I show them, here's what, in this current crisis, here's the top 10 Amazon items for kids. And it's fidget spinners, some kind of Play-Doh, weighted blankets. Listen, I'm not against any of that. I just think we can do better. I really think we have an opportunity to connect the power of God to the very real struggles. You know, Tori, if you're struggling, it means you're a human. It doesn't mean you're not spiritual. It doesn't mean you don't love Jesus. It means you're a human being, and God is present to help give you power working through it, not simply to abracadabra it away. That's the nuance of the message that has got to shift, right? It's like everybody wants to be an overcomer, but nobody wants anything to overcome. And so this is the real issue of the day. This is what every parent in their little PTA groups in their neighborhood, they're talking about their kids and them having a hard time getting up in the morning and not wanting to go to school. When I sit with Gideon, Bailey's oldest, here at my house next door in Mississippi, when he spends the night, and we talk about what scares him. And I get the opportunity to show him that it's okay to be scared, but you have to play scared because Jesus is with you. And so I'm going to hand him some tools that will help him through the day. And it is everywhere we go, everywhere I go, I am amazed that in the local churches that I'm in, this is the predominant issue. At the end, when I ask everybody to keep their heads bowed and their eyes closed, I'll just raise your hand if you're struggling in this area. It's always at least 2/3 of the audience. Why? Because we've been to hell, man. I mean, the pandemic, on top of racial issues, on top of contentious elections, on top of a second wave, on top of Ukraine versus Russia. I mean, it keeps coming. These waves keep coming. And I believe that we are better positioned to make a real difference in our communities when we understand that. You know, I've always said sometimes people need a sermon and sometimes they need a sandwich. And sometimes the sandwich is the sermon. And as much as people are needing physical help, they are needing the encouragement of Jesus to keep going in the middle of these difficult times. I believe it with all my heart.
Wow, that is wake up. What are you gonna say, Bailey? Sorry.
I was gonna say too, I just feel like even though it is so prevalent and people are talking about it, it's still something that people feel embarrassed or they keep inside, and it's such a silent thing that you don't know who's struggling. I mean, you know, I talk about this with my mom friends who are struggling, and from the outside, you have to keep it all together. You wouldn't know, but it really is. People are hurting on the inside. And so like what Dad says, it's like we can find the ways to serve our community tangibly, but also when it comes to their mental health, because everyone's struggling with something, even if we don't know it or realize it.
Yeah, it is absolutely there. It's just, I think I talked to a lot of people who are like outreach leaders who are like, we would love to do something, but it's like, where do you even start? It can be so intimidating. Like, there, what do we need to have, like licenses? How do you even open that can of worms? And I know, like, it, even for me personally, I posted something, I was highlighting y'all's podcast, and I wrote like a little caption. I was like, for a mom who's like working on her mental health. And I paused for a second. I was like, that feels vulnerable to post. It's not. Why did I pause for a second? But if I am even having a second of that, how much more do people need to be pursued in that moment? And what can we do to identify that and to go after that, but also feel, I don't think we have to feel perfect in it, but feel prepared that we can actually be helpful and not do more harm than good. So what would you guys say to a church or an outreach leader who is wanting to do something, but they have no idea how to identify, how to start, what to do?
Yeah, I think the short answer to that, Tori, is you eat the elephant one bite at a time, right? I mean, you start with small, simple steps. You know, Pastor Dino and I have been friends for so many years, and one of the many reasons I love him is his intense and practicality about how little acts of kindness make a huge difference. And you know, he's always got a gas card with him around the holidays, and For me, one of the greatest gifts to me in the last 15 years of my life in ministry, in my personal life, has been the 40 I ams, just these 40 statements about who God says that I am. And we have probably given out, literally, no preacher count, like over 40,000 of these just PDFs that people have printed and downloaded. I still have my original cards. And one of the things just practically where you can begin to make a difference is to take, you can download them from our website. We have them for adults. I think we're about done, aren't we, B, with having the kids version, that you can hand somebody a card that says, hey man, if you're struggling, what I always say, Tori, is when I'm struggling, there's where you open the door. When I'm struggling, one of the things I do is I pick some of these statements about I can do all things with Christ who gives me strength. I am more than a conqueror. Here's who I am. When I say those things out loud, God starts doing something inside of me. And so we created those for kids. And one of the things that I'm encouraging outreach leaders to do is to take these little cards, these 40 I ams in kids' language, and just plant those seeds. That to me is Pastor Dino's version of a gas card, or a McDonald's card, whatever. This issue is so big. And I think sometimes we get so paralyzed about we can't do everything. And I'm saying, let's just do something. Let's start with something like that. Bailey and I have talked so much, about this little book, Toby the Goby, that really, it's crazy how it came together. It happened early in the pandemic, and you've read the book. I had struggled to find the last chapter, what to talk about. And I found out about this little goby fish in Hawaii, and it goes from the salt water to the top of the mountains in the fresh water. And he has to go up the waterfalls, and then he goes, his jaw grows bigger so he can grab onto the rocks. And it's the story in the Bible of that God does his best work in the middle of us swimming against the tide. So my daughter-in-law illustrated, and we wrote this little book called Toby the Goby that just says 3 things, Tori. It says, number 1, you can do hard things because God is with you. Number 2, keep your eyes on the sun. And number 3, and I think even most importantly, even when you're struggling, you can help other people along the way. It's you helping somebody else that helps you get in a better place. And we just are trying to get this tool to as many people as possible. Why? Because people care about their kids. People see their kids are struggling. And most parents are like, what do I do? I'm not sure what to do. And so simple tools like Toby the Goby, the 40 I ams, those kind of very small steps, I think, are where you begin in outreach, and you get a testimony of, hey, these people get it. They understand what's going on with me. They care. Now, will you get in some situations that are going to be a bit over your head at some point? Of course you will, the same way you do in any other outreach that you do. But we can talk about that later. I know we're talking about maybe doing another kind of after the podcast with some leaders. I'd love to talk about just some practical tools we have found, some simple ways that you can begin to build this ministry out of those simple things in a way where you are positioned to help people all over your region, your area.
It's amazing.
I have a friend who downloaded the 40 AMs, and she's a teacher, and she cut them up to have in her classroom just to read with her kids. And the thing is, there's a scripture reference, but you can also make it to where you can talk about it, if you're not in a church setting or whatever. And so I think about, from my perspective, if I were to cut those out and hand them to my son's speech teacher, and, who's she going to share those with? Whether she keeps them for herself or shares them with someone else. And so the 40 IAMs is such a beneficial, easy tool that starts the conversation, like Dad says, opens it up. Whether you pass one out to someone or you just have baggies of them. I was listening to y'all's podcast about having things in your car to pass out to people struggling with homelessness. This is just another way you could have these made up, whether it's the card with all the 40 IAMs that we have, or this single 40 IAMs on each card that you could pass out to your friends, or to people you don't even know. I mean, I know for me, I'm a young mom, so I have lots of moms who that I'm close with that will send me a text and be like, gosh, today is just a really hard day. And I was thinking about how I could just have those cards, grab them a Sonic drink and take the cards and drop them off at their door, and so, and then that just at least lets them feel loved by somebody and connect their struggle to a greater power, to God, and how his power can be in their weakness. Do you know what I mean? So I think those are another tangible way to use the 40 IAMs. And it just opens up the door to conversation more than anything.
I love that. I love that that's kind of, it's the 40 IAMs I read with my toddler, and I made him repeat them back to me. And it was like the sweetest moment for him, but also for me, just to be like, wow, he's really like getting this. He's 3, but this is going to be such a special part of our routine together. And I can say I've had moments, I didn't have, even before I read the book, I had a moment with myself where God kind of brought some things out of me, like, you need to speak what I see in you over yourself. I had never seen some of the things in myself that he brought out of me, but that moment changed a lot for me. And so if if people can just have that, like, this is how God sees me, and speaking that prophetically over themselves. But I love that you guys have the cards, because sometimes people don't know where to start. But if you have these options, like, okay, I can almost not curate, because that sounds bad, but like, this person is struggling with this. Here is the match of the promise that can combat the lie that they're going through today. And that helps our teams, our serve teams, to even learn how to help navigate that. That's a special way to serve. That's a very personal way to think about, oh, I'm not just going to throw a sandwich at you, but I'm going to really think about, you're dealing with this insecurity. Here's a way to combat that. And that's a special process for them to be part of as well. So you guys have made that so practical, so fun. That is definitely something, those cards and that list can go so many different directions. And Pastor Toby, I love that you said it's one baby step at a time. I don't have to be a psychologist in order to be supportive in this area. And I think that that slows people down a lot of times. Like, what would you say to churches who maybe feel like we want to do some counseling, or we want to make sure that we're prepared before we open the floodgates here? Are there any things that you would recommend a church to have in place? Partnerships, or like just ready to be able to refer people? I know I'm talking a lot, but I want to give some context. We had a small group once recently where things got very deep and trauma was shared. And it was kind of like, oh man, luckily we had someone in our group who had a background in psychology and could give some information on what to do next. But we're going to get into those moments. What do you tell leaders to be prepared with in those moments?
Yeah, I always tell them to think about this like a funnel, right? So the top of the funnel are people who are overwhelmed by life. They're in the middle of a situation that is causing them to be anxious. They've just gone through something, the death of a loved one, the end of a relationship, and they're grieving. That's the top of the funnel. That's where we can gather, we can pray for them, we can speak words of encouragement, we could commit to be there. That's the majority of our folks. Then you've got, as you come down to the middle of this funnel, you've got a smaller group that they really need pastoral help. They need men and women who are trained pastorally. We call them at our place pastoral counselors, and they're trained at some level to kind of go below that biblical encouragement, to go beyond and to begin to see things, and many times to refer them to that very last bottom of that funnel. The smallest group are people who need licensed professionals. So I tell people all the time, leaders, I say this, look, my greatest attribute is I know when I'm in over my head. I mean, I know I'm not a counselor. I don't play one on TV. I'm awful at it. I have no letters after my name, so I'm really good at seeing when, because I talk to so many folks, right? Hey, let me refer you out. And I would say to a church that is beginning outreach, all you need is one licensed professional that you have a relationship with that you can refer to. And if you start there with that one person, like if I was in that group, like you were talking about, I'd pray for that person and say, hey, we want to encourage you. So we're going to ask, fill in the blank, whatever this person's name is, we're going to set up a time for you to go talk to them. Right. And then I think if you begin with one that can help you at the bottom of that funnel, it kind of frees you up from the need to have all the answers, right? This is your kind of your safety net. This is who you go to. And as your impact grows, and it will grow, by the way, it will grow. As it grows, then you can add another one, and you can add another one. And so what we have is now I have a network of licensed professional counselors. I know the people at the behavioral health centers in our area. I have several places that I can refer to, but it started with just one counselor. That was my counselor, quite honestly. And I got tired of, having to drive across town. So I just hired him and said, why don't you come over here? He said, well, I can't be your counselor. I go, no, but I want you to do for people what you've done for me. And he helped us begin this counseling ministry, but he was the place where I was referring people to. And I was it was easy for me to go, you need to go see Dr. David, because that's over my head. I love you, but I don't do that. And I think people think they need to have a fleet of them. You've got to have this huge council. You don't. You just have to have one professional kind of guide you along the way.
That's so good. Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were unmuting, Bailey. Did you have, okay. No, that's so good. And it just takes away the sting of like, oh gosh, I gotta, like you said, I gotta figure it all out to have that one. Even I go to counseling and it is my favorite thing ever. And all I have to do is say, I have told 12 of my friends, go to this guy. But I've also noticed that it seems a little bit easier now. Like you can do telehealth. There's all kinds of options. And so for a church just to feel like, yeah, just it's okay to go there, because we might shy back from going into those deep moments with people because we don't want to uncover anything we can't clean up. But that's ridiculous. To be able to be vulnerable and open those doors is the gift of the Holy Spirit. That's everything.
I was going to say, what a way for a church to connect with your community too, because if you're starting to connect with a counseling center in your town, like, oh my goodness, that's an amazing relationship that you're going to get to grow together, and that's also outreach can stem out from that too. I feel like when you're working with people in your community like that.
Yeah, that's so powerful. This is kind of a spin-off question, but it came up in a meetup the other day. What do you, I know it's a counselor that you personally trust that you started with. Did you guys ever run into like, hey, their counseling is maybe a little bit contradictory to some of the things we would teach in the Bible? Do you guys have any recommendations for people who are like, we like this counselor, we want to do some partnerships, but they kind of have a different view than we do? Are there any certain lines there, guidance on the right partnerships?
Well, I think as a leader, obviously I have to be comfortable with a Christian counselor that is looking through the lens of Scripture and God. And then I have to decide, okay, what are deal breakers for me? Where does it, I don't have to agree theologically with everything they're saying, but if the general tone of what they're doing is something that doesn't rest well in my spirit, then I'm going to keep looking for somebody else. I think it's really important. I was talking to a pastor the other day who was asking me about this, and I just said, man, I don't know how you can help someone long term. You can help in like you can do the fidget spinner thing, which will help soothe for a moment. But the real help has got to come from the power of Christ in you, the hope of glory. And if I've got a counselor that's not coming from there, no matter how skilled they are, I hope God uses them, and I hope they see Him in what they're doing. But I'm not going to partner with them at that moment. And you know what? Those are not funnest conversations to have. They're just called being a leader, And I've had those conversations before, quite honestly, to go, man, we're just not tracking on the same page, and God bless you, but we're gonna head in a different direction. And it's always ended up not as bad as I thought it was going to be, if that makes sense. I think a lot of times we go to worst case scenario, And, but don't let me, Tori, this is, I hope it's the Lord. Like, this is messy. Like, if you don't want a mess, don't wade in here. It's not, I think it's messy, and I'm okay. I'm 20 now, 35 years of being in the middle of those messes. That's another reason I love Pastor Dino. He's not scared of a mess at all. And this is a messy situation. And so again, at the risk of repeating myself, you eat the elephant one bite at a time, and you start here and you continue working your way there. The one other practical thing, I know I'm not letting Bailey talk, which is usually the other way around, but one of the things I think we can think about as outreach leaders is let's get some people we do trust. Let's sponsor a night of mental health for our community, right? Let's we bring 3 or 4 presenters in. They do a 15-minute overview. There's a question and answer. Let's bring a relationship expert in. Let's bring a trauma expert in. Let's bring 3 or 4 people in, do a night that says to our community, hey, we understand this is an issue. We want to be a part of the solution, and we care about you. And let's start building that testimony in a larger kind of group like that. The awareness that we're not an echo chamber. Like, the church is, we hear, we know what you're going through. We're going through those things as well. It's not you versus us. It's all of us together. I think that could be a really good way to launch out in some outreach. It's just a night, and I guarantee you better get you a bunch of seats because they're going to show up.
That is the most brilliant idea ever. I'm like going to call our church right now when we get off the phone and say, let's plan this, because I want to go. That's amazing. I love that.
I was going to say partnering with organizations too. Like dad loves to go. He has this story. We were actually at a church last weekend, and a lot of people, we were talking about how the people that have gone through it have such a strong testimony to share. And like dad having gone through it, still going through it, but finding how to connect his struggles to God's power in the midst of it. You know what I mean? That is so powerful and can be such a great person to talk about that kind of stuff. So finding people who've been through it and connecting with ministries like what we're trying to do with Gobi, with equipping people. So you don't have, even churches, they don't have to have all the answers. They don't have to find someone who's, like there are organizations and like ours that's trying to really empower people to talk about it. And especially dad has been through it personally, so he can speak from a different test side of things, if that makes sense. But I was just thinking about that while he was talking, that there are people that are that would love to come and share how their experience, I guess, or whatever.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. I'm like with you, because we all know that testimonies and stories are a big piece of how the gospel is proven. Like, it's come to life. They're saved by the blood of the Lamb, the word, their testimonies. And thinking back, we had a small group recently, and we, like, the part of the curriculum was like, we're going to share our testimonies. And the point is vulnerability. The point is to get raw and like just lay it all out there in a safe place. But the leaders talked ahead of time. We're like, it really might get messy and things may get shared, and we may have some stuff to clean up afterwards and some help. But what happened, yes, there was some of that, but what we saw happening was parts of people's stories that we didn't realize were being reflected in others. There were like sparks of hope. There was like echoes in a beautiful way of like, oh, that resonates with me, and here's how I worked through that. And so for us to be like, oh, we got to have all the answers are in the house. And I think you guys have seen that. You've seen that's why the body of Christ, we need each other. We need each other's stories, because we can't cover all of it. And that's what God does. He puts it together. So you guys are saying to have that space, just to create the space for him to work. And I love how simple, messy, but simple it is. It's incredible. You guys have shared a lot of practical ideas. I wanted to kind of open that up more. Are there any other ideas that you guys would give to churches, especially you guys have mentioned children are a big people group that are affected. Obviously, anybody can be affected, but are there certain people groups that have stuck out to you, or situations where it's like a church needs to be aware? Obviously, veterans, mental health. What are you guys seeing, and what are some ideas that you guys might have to share?
Well, one of the reasons that we did kids curriculum with Toby the Goby and coloring pages of Toby the fish and Allie the albatross and Willie the whale, all of that kids materials, because we see it so prevalent in our kids. And so the reason we built that curriculum was to be a tool for churches and for groups that they could. It's a 4-week curriculum to take them through 4 weeks of talking about those issues. And I think that's one way, that's a tool that I would think could help lots and lots of people. The other place I think you have to really be aware is in the context of teenagers. Like a lot of guys my age, I launched my ministry out as a youth pastor. And I know that what these teenagers are dealing with today is it's much more significant and much more dangerous as it relates to mental health. And one of my favorite places to go is to just go share my story with teenagers, because they need adult role models of people who are finding God in the middle of those challenges and giving them hope to go on. And I think we got to pay special attention to teenagers, to kids. And then, Harvard did a study that, Tori, I don't know how much it cost them for this study. It was like the duh moment. They said that the number one indicator of a child's mental health is the mental health of their parents, right? And in other words, like it's not a pressure thing on you as a mom, either one of you as a mom, because we're not looking for perfection here. We're looking for progress. But if you're open about how difficult it is for you at times and how you connect God to it, when it's not if, but when it's difficult for your children, they're going to connect God to it. And so teaching parents that many times, hey, your motivation for you to get as healthy as possible is because this has a generational effect. And that's why we did a little video class series that's directly aimed at parents, simply to help them understand, here's some principles of how you can walk in health, because this is going to affect your kids, and you can model for your kids. Here's what it means. Again, not the absence of challenges, but here's how I am connecting with God in the middle of those.
Wow. That is, you're my hero, dude. I can't stop. When I get excited about a conversation, I stutter so much more and I jabber because I'm just so inspired. And yeah, this is amazing. I think it is crazy that it is attacking the next generation so much, and to be that intentional and aware of it is so important. They are going to run the world one day. And if we think it's hard on us, how much more do we need to be? Like you said, being open is such a gift. You don't really think about how sharing your own story is a way of serving people. It's one of the most beautiful ways of serving people, as well as listening to theirs. But just even for within our homes, I heard a quote the other day that was like, the world is changed from your home, like your children. And so sharing our own struggles with our children, like you guys do, is a gift to them in a victorious way. So just such a perspective shift that you guys are sharing with us today is amazing.
Let me say this too, Tori. It's just, I've had an opportunity to be to have digital conversations with so many people who have no faith, none. I'm talking people that call me names I couldn't repeat. Just the way God's opened avenues for me digitally to be able to talk to some of these people. So I go back, and I had one little video that had over 500,000 views, and I went through just reading all the comments, right? And people who don't know God, when they begin to see us not making them feel guilty or shameful when we quit sending the message that if you just really loved God, this wouldn't be an issue. And it shifted to, yeah, that's been my battle too. Let me show you how God has helped me through so he can help you through. I'm telling you, you want to talk about a wide open harvest field? I'm hearing it. I'm watching it. I did a little, hey, if you're struggling, your kids are struggling, can I pray for you? 30 seconds. It was like I'd given them the hope diamond. Why? Because they're not getting that anywhere. That's not how they're perceiving what Christ followers are trying to do. And when we shatter that with our, hey man, I you've asked me before, Tori, what are some do's or don'ts? And my biggest do is when someone tells you they're struggling, validate that feeling. Validate it. Man, that's got to be hard. Yeah, I know where you've coming from. I've been there, and that's really hard, isn't it? And then point them to God, not something to do, but a person. And when I validate someone's feelings and I say, here's how I got through it, it was the power of God this way, they become open to the most simple of things like, hey, for the next 10 days, you and me, let's partner up every day. When we get in the morning, we're going to look in the mirror and we're going to say this: I am a child of the King. We're going to say it 5 times. And over the next 10 days, let's make a deal to do that. And at the end of the 10 days, let's just text each other and see, let's see what's happened. And I'm watching over and over again that validating, pointing to God, and then one simple next step. I'm watching, it's crazy what God will do in people's lives.
Oh my gosh, this is so powerful.
And you understand, you're talking to a guy who had a panic attack 10 days ago. Okay, I'm not fixed like how people think of fixed. I am hard pressed on every side. I'm just not crushed, right? Because I've got Jesus, not because of me.
It's crazy. This is so
Yeah.
beautiful.
I was going to say that I feel like too, when we become aware of sharing, like I'm speaking from a mom's perspective, I'm trying to be open with my kid. And then I realize, oh, there's still some stuff that I struggle with, like I think when I am able to see stuff in them and how to encourage them, in turn, when they're struggling, it encourages me when I'm struggling. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like our eyes are open. Like you said, it changes your perspective a little bit. And I think about, what if we started talking about this with the younger generation and giving them these words, this language, how it's going to affect the generation after that? Because, we're never going to be without the struggles, but if we can teach them how to connect their struggles and their weaknesses with the power of Jesus now, how it's going to affect the next generation after that. And Dad talked about that recently in one of our podcasts, about how all these struggles that are going on in the world, I tend to not want to talk about it with my kids because I want to shield them, but what if we were to connect this, how they're feeling and their overwhelmed feelings, with the power of God, and talking about what's going around them, how that's going to make God so much more real to them now as a younger kid, and how that will affect everyone. Or I don't know, kids are so much more open to sharing stuff. And I've seen it in my own life. I watched my dad be vulnerable my whole life. And to me, that was normal because he was like that, but it's not normal. And if we were that example to our kids, or the people we're around, the people we're impacting, it is going to make it more normal going forward, I guess, is what I have learned recently.
And that's a whole nother podcast, right? Just about your kids, just about parenting kids. Mm-hmm. In this pandemic season, avoiding the extremes of you poor baby or don't be a baby. Those are 2 extremes. Let's find the place in between those, and how the Holy Spirit helps us know where they need a pat on the back or kick in the bottom, and which one do they need. And that's a whole,
all right,
I'm sorry, I get a little wound up, but look, I'm sitting here with my daughter, Tori, who my greatest fear, my senior counselor, was I don't want to mess my kid up. And look at this. Look what God's letting us do together. Mm-hmm. So I say that, man, you guys who lead, and guys and gals who lead, man, God is faithful. if you have a heart toward the people who are mentally broken, who are hurting, man, God's got to honor it. He is going to honor it.
So good, Pastor Toby, Bailey, you'll both. It's yeah. I wrote something today to our listeners, and the title was "At the Risk of Being Weird." And I have just learned, like, I'm an awkward person. I get anxious about conversations, but every time that I choose to just lean in and be weird and be vulnerable, be open, people aren't used to that. But when we do go to those deep places, that's where God's Holy Spirit shows up. And so we do encourage everybody, like, just it's okay to be a little weird at the risk of, or the risk is being weird, but the payoff is people experiencing supernatural. And supernatural's weird in some ways, but that's what people are craving. And so vulnerability is not normal, but it is the answer. And I love that you guys today you've given very great practical advice, but it's not here's a plan for launching a program. It is here's how to love people, here's how to see people. And we always talk about it's all about seeing with the eyes of Jesus and having your spiritual senses open and awaken and tune with him. And that's where we reach people. So y'all are incredible at that. I wanted to ask, you kind of touched on it a second ago, but if our listeners are personally in this, they're feeling like they're having some mental battle, maybe some illnesses, maybe it's extreme, maybe it's just subtle, who knows? But what would you say to them personally? What advice or wisdom or encouragement?
Well, I would say first, the most important thing that you can do is let someone else know that you're struggling. You know, your greatest fear, if you're a human being, is your fear is if I'm fully known, well, I'll be fully loved. And I'm telling you, you'll never be fully loved until you're fully known. It's worth the risk. So let someone know what's happening with you, and don't be afraid to step outside of a circle and get a pastor, a counselor, get someone's help. Sometimes what seems like weakness to you because you're leading something and you're supposed to have it figured out, it's really your greatest strength when you raise your hand and ask for help. And I get calls all the time. If you can find, if you go to beagobi.com, which is our website, and there's a place there where you can literally email me and say, hey man, I'm struggling. I heard you talking about panic attacks. I'm having panic attacks. I promise you will hear back from me or my right-hand person in this thing, and we'll get some resources in your hand. 20 years ago, man, I was alone. I had nobody. And I promised God, if he'd get me through it, I wouldn't let anybody that I ever got connected with feel that way again. And so it's my honor, you know, to be able to partner with people who, not just to partner with people to help put tools in their hands to help their communities, but to partner with people who are struggling, man, and feel like, oh, well, there's somebody who gets it, you know?
Wow. It is such a gift. Bailey, did you have anything to add on his thoughts?
I mean, he's the best person to talk to. So I feel like I think him opening up as a resource is not normal, honestly. And I think that he has great resources outside of that. So it's like one baby step, you know. I think it can feel so overwhelming, like, oh, well, I need to find this. I need to have, like you said, all these steps, but just take that first step of admitting and reaching out to someone. I agree with him. And there's different, you know, ask your church if you're involved in a church they know, like, I know when I was in Mississippi and we were new here and I didn't know I wanted to go to counseling and I didn't know, I reached out to my church leaders and if they couldn't connect me with someone, they showed me someone who could, you know? And so I know that's what Cross Timbers has too. And so I think that's another place to look as well.
Brilliant. I love it. And yeah, you guys have made it so simple. If nothing else, like, y'all are a resource to guide us. And thank you for that. I wrote down, it reminds me of Bob Goff. He put his cell phone number at the back of his book. I'm like, you guys are Bob Goss of mental health world and mental wellness. That's so cool. It's a gift to have your availability and just to be able to connect and learn from you guys. So beagobi.com, we'll link to that in the show notes. And then I wanted to one more time highlight, listeners won't be able to see this, but this is Pastor Toby's book, Not Yet. Anxiety, Depression, and the Transforming Story of the Goby Fish, which is so cool. The story is amazing. I have to like go on a Google run to learn more about this fish. And then Toby the Goby is the children's book, which is so fun. My toddler loved it. It was just like, it's such an adventurous book. The artwork is amazing. And there's the children's 40 IMs at the back, which is so cool because it's a great version for them to learn. And then I love how to draw. That was such a fun part to work through with him. And then I got this, the 40 IMs. You guys are so generous. It was Christmas at my house the other day. So this was, it's just so special to be able to read every day and declare God's promises over yourself and your identity. And even, anyway, so yeah, check those out. We'll link to those. Are there any other resources you guys would like to highlight from the website or any other recommendations for people to check out?
I think you can find it all at the website, right, B? And I would say, you mentioned a couple of times, I'm really proud of Bailey in this podcast. It's called Hey Dad, Can We Talk? And it's really just a FaceTime call that we've had for years that she finally talked me into doing a podcast. And it's very unscripted, and it's just real issues that she's dealing with as a mom or as a wife or just as a follower of Jesus. And we have conversations about it. And it's on every platform. You can find us at every platform. We'd love to have you join our little growing family of hey Dad, can you talk?
And Dad's on TikTok. So for all the hip people, Toby Slough on TikTok, and I honestly think if you're looking for like how to talk about mental health, like where to even start, they're really short videos with like, here's 3 steps of like what not to do. Here's 3 steps for what to do when you're talking with someone. Here's how to talk to your kids about it. So like if you as an outreach leader are wanting to know like what are some things I can say, he gives some really practical, like just language to it that I think would be really awesome for y'all for anybody to read through.
I do not dance. Did you mention that?
He won't dance, but it's so encouraging. And on social media today, that's not what it always is about. And so I think it's just such a light. I'm proud of him. I never thought I would say my dad was on TikTok, but he is. And then same with Instagram and Facebook, you can find him on there. And they're all linked on our website, but the TikTok specifically, I just feel like those videos are so quick, easy, a great resource for people that are wanting to have the language.
Come on, Pastor Dino, TikTok. Come on, enter my world, brother. I know you're, come on.
No. I was kidding. Some people will get my reaction. That's hilarious. I'm proud of you, Pastor Toby. I'm not on TikTok and I'm not even close, but you're reaching a whole harvest field. Good job.
Right.
I'm challenged. I'm convicted. We'll get there. That is amazing. I'm so proud of you.
I have really good people. Don't think that I'm running that show. I got someone else running that show. I just do the videos. I don't know much else about it.
That's amazing. That's so cool. Well, we will link to all of those platforms and to the books, and I'll make sure everybody kind of has access to get in that world of things. And I did want to highlight one more thing. So Pastor Toby kind of gave a teaser. We're going to have a serve meetup with you guys as guest hosts. So if anybody who is an outreach leader wants to learn more, ask more specific questions about your area, we're going to have a conversation. So stay tuned for details on registering for that. But I'm so excited to have that conversation. I think we're going to get a lot of great wisdom, great ideas from there. So you guys gave us some incredible stuff. I'm clearly giddy and all over the place, but thank you for your time. Anything else you guys want to throw in or share?
No. Just love you. Love our outreach leaders all over the country. My heroes. Pray for you all the time. I'm honored to be your partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much. We honor you guys. It has been a gift to hang out today. All right, Servolution fam, we love y'all. We'll see you next time on Serve Brew. Peace out.